Hello, my friends. This is Lynda Lippin, and welcome to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We are back again here at the Pilates Goddess podcast. It's Lynda, and today I am very, very excited to bring you guys what I know is going to be a fabulous interview with Alison Marsh of Pregnancy Pilates Impact. Now, she and I have been connected online for probably 20 years now. Seriously, It's been a long time since I was teaching in the Caribbean. And what I really love about Alison is number one, her approach to safely and effectively teaching pre and postnatal clients, which I think is something most Pilates teachers could use. But she also offers a new way to think about charging for services, ways of getting over the discomfort of making money and working with our money mindset. Also thinking about different formulas for creating income as Pilates teachers, and not just doing 1, 5, and 10 packs of privates and classes for our people. And we're also going to talk about how to build confidence in your Pilates teaching, because there are so many teachers out there, as we can see on Facebook and Facebook groups, who really aren't confident, because if they were confident, they wouldn't be coming into Facebook groups and asking in a group of virtual strangers how to teach a client that has a pretty specific and often major injury, illness, or issue. So welcome, Alison.
Thank you.
You, like me, have been teaching online for a really, really long time and serving clients online during the years when certain members of our Pilates community used to say that we couldn't teach online. Remember that? The whole, you can't teach Pilates effectively online. You have to do hands-on cueing. Meanwhile, what are they all doing now? They're all teaching online.
Because they had to shift. They had to shift, and that's okay. And first of all, hello and thank you.
Hi.
This is really exciting for me as well. So because they had to shift when COVID hit, and definitely there's so much to be said about working in person with someone. Definitely, I mean, and some teachers enjoy and prefer that. And then there's teachers like me who I want to reach people all over the world. And so being in person is not what I'm doing all the time. I do teach in person still, but primarily it just is a matter of your goals. Like, what are your goals? What are you trying to do to better this world with your Pilates teaching?
Right. And that for me really became the goal too. And, it's funny. I was scrolling through Instagram, as one does, last night. And and I saw a post from one of our former apprentices at Real Pilates, Terriel Samuels, who's lovely. And Terriel had posted just a little thing about how she used to get really anxious every time a client came in, like the anxiety of, what am I going to teach this client? What exercises am I going to do with this client? And slowly over the course of, her years teaching, she now thinks, how am I just going to help this person who walks in feel better during their time with me? Right?
Yeah.
And I've been saying for years, people don't come to us necessarily for Pilates. People come to us because they want to feel and function better, right? People come to you as either consumers because they're either pregnant, prenatal, postnatal, they have a diastasis, they have whatever, and they want to get through their situation in the best way possible with basically the minimal fallout and damage possible. And Pilates teachers are also coming to you to feel and function better. They're coming to you to either deal with their own bodies, right? And their
Yeah,
own
I
postnatal
do have that.
issues.
Yeah.
Or they're also coming to deal with feeling better in their own practices of how they're
Hmm.
teaching and how they're making money and working with their clients knowledgeably, right? I don't know if you've ever heard me tell the story, but I told it in just a couple of episodes ago where I had a client come into me who had had twins. She had been encouraged to run for her entire pregnancy. She was a runner,
Mm.
was her thing. Ended up with a really severe diastasis as well as, some prolapse and some other issues.
Yeah.
And when she started looking around for Pilates, the first studio that she went to said, "Oh yeah, we totally have somebody who specializes in diastasis." And she got there and the teacher didn't even know what the phrase meant.
Mm. Yeah.
So she left. And then she went online and did more research and found she didn't come to me through the studio. She came to me through my website. So
How long ago was that? I'm curious.
this was probably about 5 years ago.
Yeah, because I would say like in the last 5 years, probably that word diastasis, is definitely becoming more. People, I think, are much more familiar with it.
They are,
And
but to
yeah.
tell somebody, to tell a potential client
Oh, right.
that you know what it is, because she's like
And you
got
don't.
some pain and some and her basically, to put it bluntly, she's got stuff like hanging literally out of her vagina that needs to be
Yeah.
helped and supported, and then to have her show up, which, anywhere you go is kind of an ordeal. You're subwaying, you're walking, you're biking, you're driving, you know, you're spending
That's a
money,
great point. That's a great point. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
to have her show up and be like, actually, we don't, this teacher doesn't specialize in what you have and doesn't even know what it is I think, another problem. When you get teachers
So,
coming to
yeah.
you, do they tend to know what it is that they're dealing with? I mean, or
Teachers, yes.
okay.
Women, no. They will have heard about it, or, I mean, doctors finally are becoming more savvy, like OBGYNs are becoming more savvy about it. So they may have heard the term, or they'll see something because of social media, about it. Teachers usually have heard it once they find me. Um, and but as far as really understanding, I think that comes back to what we were talking about before we started recording, that just trusting or having the courage to say, I don't know, let me learn more. So in the case where this woman went in and they told her, we in fact have a specialist, and then the teacher was not a specialist. To me, I don't understand that, because here's the thing: if Joseph Pilates wanted everyone to do Pilates, if that was his goal, right? He wanted everyone to do Pilates. I don't understand, and we can get it. Maybe we can get this now or later. I don't understand where the competition mindset comes from. Because if you're not qualified to do it, why not do the research and find out who is qualified to do it? Because there are enough people in this world, and I know not everyone in the world is doing Pilates, right? Now, there's not 8 billion people doing Pilates.
No.
So if you send someone down the street or whatever to a Pilates studio that can handle, in this case, diastasis recti, there are going to be plenty of other clients that you can help, and you don't have to try to fib to about the qualifications if you really want to help this client.
Right.
And
I mean, just a few months ago, you got a referral for me. Remember?
Yes.
Where I had a client who approached me. She was like, I might want to be online. I might want to be, in the studio. I'm not sure. And I immediately came back to her with, 3 different people, including you. And I was like, here's, somebody teaching in studio in Tribeca. Here's somebody who could possibly come to your house in Brooklyn. And here's Alison, who is not on this coast, but teaches online and is great. And this is her specialty. Right. And all that does is bring good energy and collaboration into the process. So I think, as Pilates teachers, we have this kind of scarcity mentality still.
Yeah. Oh man, let me tell you how energy. So I started learning this whole online game like 6 years ago, and I found an amazing coach, James Wedmore, who his specialty is teaching online business. And you would never think that, oh my goodness, putting your services online and the whole social media game takes so many ghosts from the past come out, where a lot of insecurity shows up. And so getting back to the energy, what you're just saying, energy and scarcity, James teaches the complete opposite of that. And I would have never even thought this was a thing in business until I started practicing that and living my life like that, right? Like there is an abundant amount of people that need our help, that as Pilates teachers, we're all in this together. And, today, if I have a man contact me for Pilates, I'm going to send him to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know what I mean? Like I'm not, and even, people may argue, well, if you're hard up for cash or, you're trying to make money, you don't want to be turning people away. Well, that goes back to that energy scarcity thing. If the law of attraction is a real thing, and the whole, I know people sometimes think it's like woo woo or whatever. Oh man, it is so scary real. Just like gravity is real. We can't see gravity, but it's real. We know it's real. So the law of attraction, like what we put out, so much to do, and our thoughts and the way we feel. So if you're feeling like a tight fist, you have it like your fist is tight and you're not letting anything in, nothing's going to come in, nothing's going to go out. But if you loosen up and allow, then it just all works together. And
right. And that's kind of, what's very interesting to me about hearing that is that's really how I feel about Pilates, or how I think Pilates works as well, right? That's kind of what we're looking at for the body, right? Is kind of collaboration amongst the body parts. And we're also, as teachers, I think should always be looking outside of what we learned in our training. Yes. To be able to kind of offer the best advice and support to our clients. You and I were having the the neutral spine and discussion before we started recording. I think most of the listeners, if they've been listening regularly, know, or reading any of my stuff online ever for the past few years, know my feelings about trying to teach neutral spine, because I deal with folks with compromised spines all the time, and because our ribs attach to our spines and they move every time we breathe. So there that is. And you had even said to Alison that you had a video training in your teacher training work from several years ago about teaching the neutral that you then changed, because now you're like, something, not so much.
So we were having that discussion about just having the courage to admit or be okay with evolving and sharing that. So one of my current favorite teachers is Tom Waldron. He's a Franklin method teacher. And along with him and the myriad of other teachers that I've had, that really made me start rethinking neutral pelvis and how restrictive it can be. Really, more than anything, it scares women. When women feel like they have to be, if we're talking pre and postnatal, always have to be in neutral pelvis to heal their diastasis, or, when they're pregnant or whatever, that is very restrictive to them. And when I started looking at it from that point of view and realizing how supple our bodies really are, and to look at the body in such a strict way, it's not helpful. And I'll tell you, coming back to like the energy law of attraction, like how the body, we are trying to get our body to work together, and looking at it from a whole. Gil Hedley, are you familiar with Gil Hedley? I'm sure you've heard. Okay, so he does dissections of cadavers in an incredibly respectful way, and he compares it to nature, and he constantly shows how we are nature. We are similar to. I did an interview with him that was very enlightening. He's a really great, funny guy, and he's like, we are nature. We are walking around, and it is a miracle that we have these self-sustaining bodies that pretty much, do what it needs to do with very little input from us. Now, obviously, our job is to help people get the most out of that body and feel the best that they can. But, okay, so back to the neutral pelvis, he says, take the models that we have, all of these like perfect symmetrical pictures of anatomy, perfect symmetrical, I'm looking at my skeleton over there in the corner. They're not true. Basically not true. The body is, so many people have so many different, just like nature. And that's kind of my point, is like, so saying that someone needs to be in neutral, and we always say like they're neutral, still, I think it's very vague and not helpful to clients. And so then I guess the question is, how do we teach them so that it's best for them, without talking about neutral? So I'm actually curious from you, your stance on like how do you explain to clients beyond neutral?
It's kind of interesting because I've been thinking about this a lot, because there's one particular Facebook group where they've been asking a lot about ribs to hips and neutral spines and all of these things. And actually, I dropped I think episode this morning of this recording called Cues Pilates Teachers Shouldn't Use, and one of them actually is the ribs to hips.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I feel like that can lead to some compression and inability to breathe. And what I've realized over the course of time is that I've become much more forgiving about people's bodies, right? Because number one, they're all still walking around by the time they literally walk into our Pilates studios or show up in our Zoom rooms. Right. So, generally they're doing okay. I find that I tend to cue just more for length at this point. I'm like, just lengthen up your spine. Don't tuck anything back. Get heavy in your sacrum. Let your lower back go where it goes. Lift up. Make sure you could take a deep breath. Maybe open up your collarbones a little bit and pull up and in through your abdominals and maybe your pelvic floor to assist the exhale. But I don't get all into the Kegels and stuff, and because people are doing that anyway. And frankly, I after my hysterectomy and having had interstitial cystitis for like years, So basically, you feel like you have a urinary tract infection, but you don't.
Wow.
Um, my pelvic floor wasn't just weak. My pelvic floor was tight because I was like
Yeah.
contracting against the feeling of needing to pee basically every 20 minutes.
Oh,
Right.
wow. Yeah.
So like
hmm
for me, giving me cues to like tighten my pelvic floor doesn't work for me.
Right. Yeah.
So what I've just really over the course of time, I discover I just kind of cue more the movements that people are doing. Then I look at their bodies while they're doing it. And then I kind of cue from there. So I don't start them with anymore with let's find your neutral pelvis and let's do this and let's do that. I
Right.
just
Right.
get them moving. I just get them moving and breathing and, with obviously modifications, as needed. Like if we're trying to avoid a lot
hmm
of intra-abdominal pressure or I'm trying to keep them extended due to osteoporosis and wedge fractures and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm just talking to them about length and movement. I'll talk to them, about sitting and standing and moving from the hips and not, moving from their backs. I'll talk to them about
Yeah.
all of those things. But I don't talk neutral anymore. I do not
Yeah.
make that statement.
Yeah. So, I have to share a fact that so I think it's becoming more popular, maybe, but it's really important to understand with pregnant women specifically. So, pregnant women have to be in a lordotic position with
Mm-hmm.
their pelvis for them to balance. And it is protective to their pelvic floor. So, if we're telling a pregnant woman specifically to be in neutral, what's happening is she's actually now putting all the weight down into her pelvic floor, where the gentle curve of the back or lordotic curve lengthened. Okay, so there's a difference between just cinching in the low back and then having a lengthened
Right.
position, the natural length of position. It protects the pelvic floor because now the pelvic floor is dispersed back. And here's a little fact that teachers can share with their clients right away that have incontinence issues. If they go to sneeze, laugh, anything like that, and a little bit of pee comes out, all they have to do is stick their hip either back or to the side, and that way the pressure doesn't go down right into the pelvic floor, which is why, I mean, incontinence is a whole nother conversation, but
Right.
as the client is healing from incontinence, that's what they can do so they don't pee their pants. And it's
Right. Now, what's interesting
little
about
things.
that is I would bet, I would bet that 99.9% of Pilates teachers, if you ask them what position a client should go in to try to avoid that loss of urine during that much downward pressure, they would say posterior tilt or neutral. I
Huh.
would bet.
And see this is where we get into that conversation where again, like, so back to that video I changed in my course after I started exploring. It's having the courage to be okay with not knowing and be okay with evolving and changing it up. um, you know, and we were talking about the reason why teachers teach neutral is because that's what they were taught. That's what we were taught to teach. And so I think teachers get scared, especially newer teachers, that they're not allowed to change it up or not allowed to think for themselves when they absolutely are. That's what I love about individual Pilates teachers. And I tell my students all the time, you have experience unlike any other. You are unique in what you come from. And I encourage them all to add that into their teaching. Everything I teach at the end or during, I tell them, this is a suggestion. take the basics, and if we want to, I've got a formula today that can help teachers like keep clients safe pre and postnatal, but take the basics, take the exercises I'm teaching you as a suggestion and change it up as needed. Be okay with being creative. And then we get into the whole like classical contemporary conversation where I always tell classical teachers, please, for pre and postnatal women, you have to change it up. If you want to help the client feel better, you have to be okay to use balls. You have to be okay if you really want, there's always the exception, right? But that, just encouraging teachers that you are unique in what you are teaching, and start asking questions about what you're learning and what you're teaching.
Right. And remember, like the discussion I had with Alan Menezes, that these distinctions that we make now between like classical and contemporary and all of these things all happened as a result of that fucking lawsuit. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Over the trademark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We did not have this. There was no classical or contemporary Pilates before then. There were styles. We had styles.
Interesting.
There was the West Coast style. Yeah. So there was East Coast style that wasn't all like tight Romana, but was that kind of like Romana, Corolla,
Sure, yeah.
Situation. And then you had West Coast style, which was, Ron Fletcher and that group. And they did things like just a little bit differently, right? Maybe there was a little bit different choreography, but we all knew we were still teaching Pilates. We were all still teaching footwork. We were all still working on reformers. It wasn't like, oh, we don't recognize, what you're teaching. And
that's interesting.
Once this Pandora's box opened and everyone got all pissy, then we got this huge divide, which is very interesting, to me, because I remember when it wasn't like that.
So I'm glad you brought this up, because I want to talk a little bit about my lineage. So I'm West Coast, trained contemporary. Mm-hmm. Okay. So who trained me was Dolly Kellepetz, and here's her lineage. She was taught by Elizabeth Larkham. This is all West Coast. I'm in Las Vegas, and Dolly was trained by Elizabeth Larkham before Pilates training was a thing. And this is when the lawsuit was going on, because I remember they couldn't call it Pilates. She had to call her training DK body balancing. So that's where you get all these names, right? That were like in the 80s that didn't say Pilates in them. So anyway,
because we all taught exercise based on the work of Joseph H. Pilates.
Right. So Elizabeth Larkham trained Dolly at the St. Francis Hospital in San Francisco. And Elizabeth Larkham was trained by Ron Fletcher, who my understanding is he brought it to the West Coast. He was a dancer and choreographer. So this is kind of where that idea of contemporary came from, right? So if people, have seen my style or know how I teach, that's where I come from, is that dancer background. And I did not know that classical and contemporary were because of that lawsuit. That's where those terms came from. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Prior to that, we never had that. We just all taught Pilates. And we understood that it was different styles, because all of these people had worked with Joe and Clara, right? So it wasn't like, you were like, oh, Ron Fletcher, where the hell did he come from? Like Clara sent him over to the West Coast with her blessing and said, please go teach, I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then, my background was originally at SUNY Purchase, right? Where I was an undergrad. So that was kind of, Steve Giordano, Nancy Allison, and Romana. But then during the lawsuit, I left the classical community. I left that community altogether, went with Physical Mind. And I was the founding member of the Institute for the Pilates Method, which then became Physical Mind because, they were the first to be sued, actually.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And
Amazing.
And then did pretty much, contemporary and contemporary teacher training, but always with kind of a good classical basis.
And, you had said that you were trained at a university. Is that where you said you came out of?
Hang on one second. My headphones are giving me a little bit of a problem.
Okay.
So, but can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, awesome. So, and I can hear you. So talk away.
Okay. So I was bringing up that, so Dolly Calipez, DK Body Balancing, she brought Pilates to Las Vegas in the 80s and opened up Pilates by Dolly. I guess by this point, the lawsuit that was over, and so people could start using Pilates again. Dolly teaches at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. That's where I met her in 1998. And I was a dance major, and she was the ballet professor, but you also had to take Pilates to fulfill your bachelor's in dance education. So that's how I came into Pilates. Well, now Dolly has been able to make Pilates a minor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. You can actually get a minor degree in Pilates, and now there's Pilates studios all over Las Vegas, but I love history. Okay. I've read all the Joseph Pilates biographies. And I mean, I think it's so important to understand that. I know you were talking to Alan, about, how a lot of teachers don't know. They only know the person who trained them. To me, that's so important. And I think that is what helps with gaining the confidence and the courage to know where you came from and see how things have evolved. And I feel like it gives you a base, like a strong base of kind of like knowing who your parents are.
Well, when I first came into graduate school, right, for my doctorate in philosophy, you have to take preliminary exams, right? You have to pass, within your first 2 years, a series of competency exams showing that you know, like the basic theories of the history of philosophy. Doesn't matter if that's the kind of philosophy you do or what you want to do going forward, you have to be able to coherently say something about Kant and about Descartes and about the pre-Socratics and, about all of these people. Because if you're going to go out there as a philosophy professor with your doctorate, you need, you need to be able to teach all of the things, because chances are you're going to teach intro to philosophy at some point in time. And I feel like, as for Pilates teachers, there are contemporary programs that I think totally poo-poo the history. There just are.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, Joe Pilates knew some stuff, but he really didn't know a lot of stuff. And so we moved on from that. And here's our awesome new evolved thing. Or you get the, Joseph Pilates knew everything. And we don't really need to change anything about what he did. But there's a whole spread of things in the middle. And this is where I've always encouraged my teachers. I'm like, take sessions at different studios, like work with different styles of teachers.
Yeah.
If you're interested in working overseas, because, I recruit for overseas work, relatively often. And you never know what kind of equipment you're going to get over there. I'm like, if you've never taught on a stop machine, get your ass into a stot studio and take some
Yeah.
classes.
Yeah.
If you're classical only and you've never dealt with ropes, risers, and 5, colored springs of different resistances, I highly recommend getting your butt into a studio that has balanced body, apparatus,
Yeah.
so that you can get a feeling for what that's like before you go teach on it, instead
Yeah.
of being like, oh, well, I only teach on this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, getting that well-rounded, knowing, I mean, that's to me mastering, what we do, having that deep understanding for
Right.
sure.
And I think that's, where ultimately Pilates teachers need to get to. Now, another question that I really have for you, though, is that you have done this whole kind of shift into online programs, into
Yeah.
subscriptions, into different models of working with clients, as opposed to just the one-on-one. Because what a lot of teachers did, even moving online, was they just took that studio payment model and just brought it online.
Right. Right. So yeah, I'm glad we're going to get into this. So, everything that I've learned has been from James Wedmore. He is just to set the stage for what I'm learning. He is one of the most humble guys, and he, in his last launch, did 5 million, I want to say. So he's the guy to learn from. And it's funny when I say that, I know there's teachers that are going to think, oh, I did a survey. I asked teachers, I said, how comfortable are you charging for your services? Did you know 64% are not comfortable? And
I
that
do
breaks
know.
my heart.
I do know. I've sent out emails asking teachers, or just talking about income. If I send an email out to my list or do a Facebook post in Pilates Profit Lab, right, and I talk about income and making more money teaching Pilates, I will immediately have a host of unsubscribers and people who leave the group, and they often will come back to me in a DM or a response and go, I don't feel like we should be doing this for the money. And I'm like, well, how exactly are you paying your rent?
So, okay. So yeah, so this is so good. Okay. I get it, because I was that person many, many years ago. And this is the mindset I want teachers to get into. Okay. It's not about making the money. Okay. It's about helping people. And it's about getting your clients to commit to their health. So I encourage teachers to stop worrying about the quote, charging what you're worth, and start charging what the transformation is for your client. This isn't about you. This is about your client. And what is your client's transformation worth? That's what we're focusing on. So the formula, and actually what I'll do is I'll prepare a link and people can just click it and get this formula that
Great.
I have. That was inspired by James Wedmore. But this formula is rather than the 5-10 package that we're used to. I encourage teachers to start at 30. The reason why 30 is because Joseph Pilates said, after 30, you have a whole new body. Okay. So that's kind of where that came from. But then also for my niche, for pre and postnatal, it's perfect because we're creating a package for them that's going to take them through pregnancy and then a few months postpartum. Okay. And you can apply this to any kind of client. But it works really well for pre and postnatal because you're looking at an end goal, right? So you are getting your client excited about the benefits and their goals and carrying them through that postpartum period. And instead of just having like the 30 card, you are going to set them up with a monthly payment plan. So whatever that total is that you charge, let's say then it's $200 a month for, let's say we're doing 8 months. You're setting them up so that you're going to be having that income for the next 8 months. But this is the key. you know that that client is going to succeed because they have committed now. They've committed to this outcome, and you're helping them do that. Money is just a tool. Money is a tool that we use to get things. Okay, it's not evil. It's not anything. It's just money. It's our beliefs about it and the way we've been raised that makes us think that it's evil or not. And so money is just a tool that says, here, I commit to this. That's all it is. And as far as making money, yeah, like you want to live your life, right? Like you don't want to be a poor Pilates teacher and this is the key, who is, what's the word? They are resisting, or what's the word I'm looking for? They are resent. They resent their clients. They resent the time that they're putting into it because they're not making rent or whatever. And I used to be that person. I used to be that teacher. And I'm so grateful. It's taken many years, but I've really been able to work on myself and look at my past and ask why I believe this. And a lot of it is our industry, has kind of put that into us, right? Charge what you're worth. Well, if you don't believe you're worth much, if you have low self-esteem, you're not going to charge much. And on the other hand, if you think you're the hottest teacher, in the land, then, and you're charging because of that, it's still about you and it becomes an ego thing. So I like looking at, we're trying to help people, and it is absolutely okay and necessary that you make an income with what you're doing because you're helping people doing that. So that is my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I have worked with so many teachers who start to resent their clients. You can feel it in the tone of how people ask questions. Yes. On social media, right? What brought me to the hips and ribs podcast that dropped today was I read a question and it was like, can somebody please give me some more cues? Like this is not, obviously they didn't say the question, but this is the tone, right? Was I keep showing my clients the flared ribs and the ribs to hips, and they still don't understand. So can somebody give me some more cues? And people were just giving out cues in the comments. And I'm ultimately going to throw a podcast link in the comments today. But I actually said, people need to breathe. And if their backs are tight and they've been working like that for a while, they have to flare their ribs to breathe. So you asking them to connect their ribs to their hips and not flare their ribs, it's just not going to happen. And it's not a cognitive, misunderstanding on the part of your client. It is that they physically cannot do that and breathe without feeling compressed and bad. And if you feel compressed and bad and you can't breathe, you are not going to go back to Pilates. Right? And if you feel like your teacher is mad at you, frustrated with you, or thinks that you're an idiot, you're also probably not going to go back to Pilates.
So I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's one of my biggest things is awareness of the teacher having. Okay, so I have to tell this quick story, because this is kind of what made the snowball of me thinking about this. Inside one of the popular Facebook Pilates groups, there was a post, this is many years ago, but there was a post from a teacher that said, in like the big bold letters, what is your biggest pet peeve about your client? Go. There were like 150 comments. And I'm thinking to myself, there was a few of us that were like, how is this helpful? And it really put me on this trajectory of the way we think about our clients, the way we talk about our clients affects their outcome. You don't think that your client can feel, talking about energy and law of attraction, you don't think they can feel you're hating them or so frustrated with them? we got to look back at ourselves and check ourselves and be like, and look, I'm human. Like, I'm sure I've thought many negative things about my clients before, but definitely now with the awareness that I have about all of this, I see how much it affects people when you resent or are frustrated with them. And allow, I love the word allowing, just allow your client to be who they are. You do the best that you can for them, because not everybody has a dancer perfect body. We got to get away from that and allow our clients to work what feels good to them. And more than anything, it's like, please just watch how you talk about and think about your clients. You want to think highly of them. You want to think the best of them. You're there to help them. And that just kind of all goes into that whole, like, the transformational package and feeling good about charging for your services, because you know what you're doing for them is amazing. It's going to change their life. And what kind of a price can you put on changing someone's life? So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a big problem, I think.
Yeah, I feel like we want, especially as newer teachers, right? We all wanted kind of people's bodies to look a certain way and be a certain way. It's very interesting, because I've always kind of struggled with neck and shoulder stuff, from teeth grinding in graduate school to whatever else. And it turns out I had a bunch of major health issues last year, and I ended up getting kind of a full spine MRI. And it turns out that I have a really, really like significant cervical degeneration, right? At like 4 or 5. And it's really like, and I'm like, oh, that's like my right shoulder thing. It's not a right shoulder thing. It's I'm like, oh, that's why, like, sometimes when I go to stretch my arm out this way, I get the electric shock in my thumb and my index finger. It all makes sense now. But, but what I was talking to my neurologist, and what I realized was that a big part of my problem in my earlier years was that I spent so much time with the shoulders down the back and the shoulders down cueing and the keep the shoulders down cueing. And of course, now when I think about that, I'm like, why would we ever do that? Because, you're just compressing your rib cage and overstretching all the muscles that attach to your cervical vertebrae, so that if you do end up with some kind of arthritic degeneration, it just makes it worse, because then all those, the multifidi up there are overstretched, and you're more likely to have, nerve symptoms. And I would, like to just basically postpone any potential like neck surgeries or injections and things like that, for as long as I can. And I looked at her and I'm like, is that why I really feel the will to lift my arms, open up my armpits, open up my collarbones, shrug my shoulders up, like, and she was like, yes. Stop pushing them down. Of course, what are we taught in our Pilates teacher training?
Oh yeah, back
shoulders down.
Shoulder blades in the back pockets. Shoulder blades in the back pockets. Armpits to the hips. Yeah, I mean it's
I mean, we teach this kind of ideal, way, what we think is an ideal way of being, but really functionally out in the world, it's not always so ideal, right? I mean, and I remind people that we want to be teaching in the studio what we want people to be doing out of the studio.
I've got a whole chapter in my course about everyday movement, about how to teach your client. I mean, that's so huge. Teaching them how to move outside the studio.
On,
I do a lot of that.
Your child, bathing. How do you lift your baby in and out of the tub? How do you lift your toddler in and out of the tub when they're like, kicking and big and a little heavier?
Man. Yeah.
Like, how do you do these things? Because to sit there and go like, well, we don't ever want, you should never do that kind of movement when you're, postnatal and have whatever. Well, guess what? Like, if you got a nanny, that's great. they can bathe your kid, right? But if you don't, and which most people don't, then
Right.
you have to get up and down off the ground, and you have to deal with doing that, and you have to find the ways of doing that. It's like really what it all comes down to is everyday movement. It wasn't, and that's what Joe said, right? What
Right,
is
right.
physical
Yes,
fitness? The ability to
yes,
engage in our everyday tasks with
yes.
spontaneous zest and pleasure. I love that quote. I just love
I
that.
love it. Yes. Well, I love his. If no one has, if teachers have not read his manifesto, his first, his it's
Oh,
in
return to life.
Return to Life. If they have not read that, please read that. Please, it will make so much more sense to what you're doing. It really, and it will get you away from worrying about what if you don't know an anatomy term, or it's just it's about life. It's return to life. That's what he said. That's the name of his manifesto. That's the name of his exercise. So it's yeah, it's just getting back to on that confidence note and courage note, that ask your, trust yourself more in what you're feeling and what you're doing. And you have to be doing Pilates. Like if you're a teacher and you don't do Pilates, I had a teacher that I used to be in the studio with that would teach her clients, and her clients, I remember this conversation, well, how many times a week do you do this? And the teacher goes, oh, I don't do this. I don't do this. It hurts my body and I don't do it. I'm laughing.
Well,
Like,
that really
no, you got to
inspires
do it.
confidence in your client when you can't find the work of Pilates that doesn't hurt your own body,
Right.
right?
So, so
Because
you got to do
look,
it.
there's
You gotta
lots
do
of
it.
stuff I don't do anymore. Like
Right.
like with my neck thing, all of a sudden I realized that rolling, any kind of rolling, I don't care what it is, any kind of overhead inversion, rolling like a ball. Even if I just go to the tips of my shoulder blades and like do all that shit, it has an adverse effect on my neck, always, right?
And so
So I
you
don't do
don't do
them
it
anymore.
anymore. Yeah.
Now I
Yeah.
can curl my head
And
up. I can still do hundreds and do ab series and all of that. It's fine. I can still do teasers. All that's good. But yeah, I was the same way when I was still in the studio with things like short spine, like between the unstable sacroiliac joint and the neck thing. Short spine would feel kind of so good while I was doing it, and then later on that day and the next day, I'd be in horrific pain.
mm,
So, that went from being like in my top 10 to not so much.
yeah.
And that's okay. Do I still teach it? Of course I do. I did it for 25 years or more.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm good at teaching it. So, Alison, how can people get in touch with you?
Uh, if they want to get in touch with me, the best place is Instagram.
Okay.
It's like pregnancy.pilates.impact, and DM me. Love that. Love having conversations there. And then my website is pregnancypilatesimpact.com. We'll put in some links that people can get the profitable formula. I'll go ahead and put in, there's a SAFE, an acronym I use, SAFE, for teachers who are getting started or just kind of need like a quick thing to look at. I'll be happy to put that in there as well. And yeah, I just love talking to teachers and getting to know what they're struggling with so that I can help you through that. Pre and postnatal specific. I mean, that's what I do, pre and postnatal.
Right. So, yeah, guys, so when you look at the show notes, you will have links to the downloads. You will have links to finding Alison on social media, website
Sure.
links, and all of those things. I really encourage you to get in touch with her if that is a population that you're working with. And I really don't know any Pilates teachers who kind of get through without getting pregnant people or
Yeah.
or
And
clients
it's
getting pregnant or clients after pregnancy. It will
yeah.
happen, and you just want to be prepared and know what you're doing when it happens.
Yeah, I have a training coming up. If you'll, I'm sure if you're listening to this after the fact, I'm sure there's another one coming. But usually every 3 to 5 months, I do a 3-day completely a complementary training that kind of just gives the basics and laying out. We have a confidence piece, a competence piece, and a contribution piece, which is like the business piece. So I encourage, if you're just getting started and learning about all of this, that's a great place to start. And we could probably put that link in there too, if people want to learn more about that. That's coming up the end of September, and it's 2022 right now, the end of September 2022.
Right. So right now we're recording this on September 1st. I actually plan on putting out live next week. So everybody will have perfect. It, and we'll have the link in plenty of time to register for the training. Cool. Well, yeah. Alison, thank you. Thank you so much. And I had a great time talking to you. And I think we might need to do this again. I think this might happen.
Well, like we talked about, we'll talk about diastasis recti maybe next time.
And we'll do a little more specific, both for consumers as well as for Pilates instructors in terms of dealing with diastasis.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much once again for joining us on the Pilates Goddess podcast. Please, if you have a chance, go on to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and rate and review the podcast. That is completely free, and it is basically one of the best things you could do to help spread the word and get more people listening. So, Alison, stay on after I stop.
Okay.
And
thank you.
For everybody, I will see you, or actually you'll hear me next time on the Pilates Goddess podcast. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Music brought to you by Nerd Salad. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, especially if you liked it. And please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks.